3:20 in the morning, and somebody's dragging a steel gate across my driveway. The screech of metal on asphalt cuts through the night like a chainsaw through silence. I'm standing barefoot on cold concrete, clutching my grandfather's old copper Surveyor badge in my palm, the one that's been hanging on our gatepost since the 70s. 3 men in high-vis vests are setting up a private property no access sign right where the public road meets my lake access. Behind them, a diesel generator roars like an angry beast. The smell of hot exhaust mixes with wet pine needles from last night's storm. If you're watching Karenology, you know these situations never start at 3 in the morning by accident. They start months earlier with small moves you don't see coming. See, I inherited this place from my grandfather, Tom Harris. They called him Old Tom around here. Built this cabin in 1967 when the lake was just a fishing hole and a dirt road. That road, it's been public access since before I was born. Fishermen, campers, kids learning to swim. 3 generations have used that strip of gravel. But our homeowners association had other ideas. Mr. Harris. The voice belongs to Karen Miller, all 47 years of her stuffed into a navy blazer at 3 in the morning. She's holding a tablet like it's the Constitution. This access was privatized under Article 12 of the 2019 Covenant. You've been notified. I look at the copper badge in my hand. Grandpa earned this after 30 years mapping this county. Every property line, every easement, every public right-of-way. He knew where things belonged. Karen, people have been fishing this lake since before you moved here. She taps her tablet. The law doesn't care about tradition, Tom. That's when I noticed the van parked behind the work crew. More signs stacked inside, more gates. They're not just closing my access, they're closing everyone's. Have you ever felt that moment when you realize you're not just defending your property, you're defending something bigger? That's what hit me standing there in my bare feet, watching them bolt that gate to posts they'd apparently installed while I slept. By 6 a.m., my mailbox is stuffed with violation notices. 23 separate citations, each one stamped with yesterday's date. The math doesn't add up, but the dollar amounts do. $2,847 in fines for everything from unapproved landscaping to disturbing the peace to damage to association property. Karen's still there when I walk out to check the mail. She's moved her command post to a folding chair right at the property line, tablet balanced on her knees, watching me like a hawk watches a mouse. The penalties double every 48 hours, she says without looking up, just so you understand the timeline we're working with. I hold up the violation notices. Disturbing the peace at midnight. Your generator was running past quiet hours. I don't have a generator, Karen. Now she looks up, smiles like she's explaining basic arithmetic to a child. The association installed noise monitoring equipment throughout the neighborhood. Very sophisticated technology. Everything's documented. The smell of fresh ink from the citations makes my stomach turn. These aren't mistakes or oversights. They're surgical strikes designed to bleed me dry before I can fight back. But here's what Karen Miller doesn't know about men like my grandfather and men like me. We don't just defend what's ours. We remember what's right. I walk back inside, set that copper badge on the kitchen table, and start making coffee. Strong coffee. Because if the homeowners association wants to play games with public access rights and fake violations, they just picked the wrong guy to mess with. Outside, I can hear Karen talking to someone on her phone, something about phase 2 and making examples. The coffee's still brewing when I hear car doors slamming in my driveway. Car doors slamming means neighbors, and neighbors at dawn means trouble. Through my kitchen window, I count 4 vehicles parked along the road. The Hendersons from 2 houses down, the Patels who run the bait shop, old Mrs. Chen with her walking stick. They're all staring at that new gate like it personally insulted their mothers. Tom! Bill Henderson's voice carries across the yard. He's a big man, retired from the phone company, still wears his work boots everywhere. What the hell is this? I pour my coffee and walk outside. The morning air tastes like dew and diesel fumes. Karen's folding chair sits empty now, but her clipboard's still there, weighed down with a rock. Homeowners Association says the road's private now, I tell them. Mrs. Chen pokes the gatepost with her walking stick. She's 83 and sharp as broken glass. My Henry proposed to me down by that dock in 1963. You telling me I need permission to visit my own memories? The Patels look sick. Their bait shop depends on lake access. Without it, they're just selling worms to nobody. There's gotta be paperwork, Bill says. You can't just steal a public road overnight. That's when the sheriff's deputy pulls up. Young guy, maybe 25. Looks like he'd rather be anywhere else. His nameplate reads Morrison. Morning, folks. He tips his hat. Got a complaint about trespassing on association property. Trespassing? Bill's face goes red. I've been fishing this lake longer than this kid's been breathing. Deputy Morrison checks his notepad. According to the complainant, this access road was legally transferred to the Homeowners Association in 2019. Anyone using it without permission is subject to citation. Mrs. Chen taps her stick harder against the post. Show us the transfer documents. Ma'am, I don't have those with me, but... Then you don't have much of anything, do you? I like Mrs. Chen more every minute. The deputy looks uncomfortable. Look, I'm just responding to the complaint. If you folks have issues with the association, you need to take that up through proper channels. What channels? This from Sarah Patel. First time I've heard her voice above a whisper. They won't return our calls, won't schedule meetings, won't even tell us who voted for this. That stops me cold. Who voted for what? Bill pulls out his phone, scrolls through messages. Emergency Association vote last Tuesday. Privatization of common areas for security and maintenance purposes. Has passed 38-9. I wasn't at any vote last Tuesday. Nobody told me there was a vote. You get notice of this vote? I ask the others. Head shakes all around. The Patels didn't know. Mrs. Chen didn't know. Bill Henderson, who's lived here 15 years and served on the association board twice, didn't know. Deputy Morrison's radio crackles. Female voice sounds official. Unit 7, what's your status on the trespassing complaint? Still on scene, dispatch, trying to sort things out. The radio voice gets sharper. Complainant is requesting immediate citations for all violators. Are you proceeding with enforcement? Now the deputy really looks uncomfortable. He's caught between following orders and making enemies of half the neighborhood. The smart play would be to write some tickets, make the complaint go away, let lawyers sort it out later. Instead, he does something that surprises me. Dispatch, I need to verify property boundaries before proceeding. Can you patch me through to the county clerk's office? The radio goes quiet for a long moment. Then, negative Unit 7, county offices are closed weekends. Proceed with enforcement based on complainant documentation. Morrison looks at that gate, looks at us, looks at his badge. You can see the wheels turning. This smells wrong to him, too. Desi folks, he says finally, I'm going to need everyone to clear the roadway for now. But I recommend you file complaints with the county first thing Monday morning. Something about this doesn't sit right. We start walking back to our cars, but Mrs. Chen stops at the gate. She reaches into her purse and pulls out an old manila envelope, yellowed with age. Officer Morrison, she says, my late husband worked for the county surveyor's office for 37 years. These are copies of the original plat maps from 1953. This road was dedicated as public right-of-way before there was a homeowners association. She hands him the envelope. Henry always said, documentation beats conversation every time. The deputy opens the envelope, studies the maps. His expression changes. Ma'am, these show the road as public access all the way to the water line. That's right. But the association provided documentation showing legal transfer. Mrs. Chen taps her walking stick once, hard, against the asphalt. Then somebody's lying, Officer Morrison, and it's not the county records. The radio crackles again, same voice, more insistent. Unit 7, status report. Morrison looks at the maps, looks at the gate, looks at that clipboard Karen left behind. Dispatch, I need backup and a supervisor on scene. We may have a document fraud situation. That's when I know Karen Miller just made her first mistake. Morrison's supervisor arrives in 20 minutes. Sergeant Williams, gray hair, steady eyes, the kind of cop who's seen every scam twice. He takes one look at Mrs. Chen's maps, then at Karen's clipboard, and his jaw tightens. Deputy Morrison, walk me through this. Association claims they legally acquired this public access road in 2019. Neighbors say they never got notice of any vote. County maps show it's been public since 1953. Williams studies the documents. Who signed the transfer papers for the association? Morrison flips through Karen's paperwork. Karen Miller, association president. When did she become president? Let me check. Morrison pulls out his phone, scrolls through county records. Elected March 2021. Williams looks up from the papers. So she signed documents transferring property in 2019, 2 years before she had authority to do it. The math is simple, and it's damning. That's forgery, Mrs. Chen says quietly. My Henry saw plenty of fake documents in his surveyor days. Always said the dates tell the truth. My phone buzzes. Text message from a number I don't recognize. Stop making trouble or things get worse for everyone. I show it to Sergeant Williams. Anonymous threats now. Keep that message, he says. Evidence. But before we can dig deeper, 3 more cars pull up. Association members, the ones who show up to every meeting and vote however Karen tells them to vote. I recognize most of them. The Washingtons from Oak Street, the Kowalskis who complain about everything, Janet Pierce who runs the neighborhood book club like a military operation. They climb out of their cars looking righteous and ready for battle. Sergeant Williams, Janet Pierce marches over like she owns the badge on his chest. We demand you arrest these people for trespassing on association property. Williams doesn't look impressed. Ma'am, we're investigating possible document fraud. There's no fraud here. This from Dave Washington, retired accountant, speaks like every number is personally verified. The transfer was legal and proper. These people are just upset because they lost the vote. What vote? Bill Henderson steps forward. Nobody here got notice of any vote. We followed proper notification procedures, Janet says. Posted notice, sent emails, published in the association newsletter. Mrs. Chen taps her walking stick against the ground. What newsletter? I've lived here 43 years and never seen an association newsletter. The digital newsletter, Janet replies, sent to all email addresses on file. I don't have email, Mrs. Chen says. Neither do I, adds Bill Henderson. That's not our problem, Dave Washington shrugs. Legal notice doesn't require individual confirmation of receipt. Sergeant Williams holds up a hand. Let's see this digital newsletter. Janet pulls out her phone, swipes and taps, then frowns. The link seems to be broken. When was it sent? More tapping. Last Tuesday morning, but the server might be down. Convenient, Williams mutters. That's when Karen Miller's car pulls up. She gets out slowly, surveys the crowd like a general reviewing troops. Today she's wearing a different blazer, crisp white shirt, carrying a leather briefcase. She looks like she expected this confrontation. Sergeant Williams, she nods. I'm Karen Miller, association president. I understand there's some confusion about property rights. No confusion, ma'am. Questions about document authenticity. Karen opens her briefcase, pulls out a thick folder. I have complete documentation, property transfer agreement, signed and notarized, county filing receipts, board resolution authorizing the acquisition. She hands the folder to Williams with the confidence of someone who's never been challenged. But Mrs. Chen steps closer, squints at the papers over the sergeant's shoulder. That signature, she points with one gnarled finger, that's not how the county clerk signs documents. Excuse me? Helen Morrison was county clerk from 2015 to 2020. I've seen her signature on dozens of documents from my late husband's surveying work. She never used that flourish on the M. Karen's face doesn't change, but her knuckles go white where she grips the briefcase handle. Williams looks at the signature, then at Mrs. Chen. You're certain about this? Officer, I've been filing property documents in this county for 43 years. I know Helen Morrison's signature like I know my own name. The silence stretches like a taut wire. Karen's supporters shift uncomfortably. Deputy Morrison takes notes. The morning sun climbs higher, making everyone squint. Finally, Karen speaks. I think there's been enough disruption for one morning. Sergeant Williams will be filing formal trespassing complaints against anyone who continues to use this access illegally. Ma'am, until we verify these documents, I can't enforce trespassing claims. Then we'll handle this ourselves. There it is, the threat, delivered calm as an ordering coffee. Williams closes the folder. Mrs. Miller, I strongly advise against any self-help remedies. If these documents are fraudulent, you're looking at serious charges. Karen smiles. If they're fraudulent, Sergeant. Big word if. She walks back to her car, briefcase in hand, supporters trailing behind like ducklings. As her car pulls away, my phone buzzes again. Another unknown number. Last warning. I show it to Williams. He shakes his head. This is escalating fast. You folks need to be careful. Mrs. Chen taps her walking stick one final time against that gatepost. Careful's what got us into this mess, officer. Sometimes you have to make noise to be heard. She's right. Karen Miller just declared war on the whole neighborhood. Time to decide if we're going to fight back. By Monday morning, the war had gone digital. I'm sitting at my kitchen table with that copper Surveyor badge, scrolling through my phone, watching our neighborhood tear itself apart online. The Homeowners Association Facebook page exploded overnight with posts I've never seen before. Photos of my property with complaints about overgrown vegetation and unsightly maintenance. Pictures of Bill Henderson's truck parked on the street with captions about commercial vehicles in residential areas. Even Mrs. Chen got hit. Someone posted a photo of her garden gnomes with a complaint about non-approved decorative items. Every single post has dozens of likes and angry comments from accounts I don't recognize. Neighborhood Watchdog 47. Concerned Resident 2025. Property values matter. Generic names, no profile pictures, all echoing the same talking points about rules and regulations and property values. My phone rings. Dorothy Stein from the county library, voice shaking. Tom, I need to tell you something, but I'm scared. Dorothy's worked at that library for 37 years. I've never heard her scared of anything. What's wrong, Dorothy? It's about those property documents Karen showed the police. I've been researching county records like you asked, and Tom, I think I found something important. The library opens at 9. I'm there at 8:55, waiting by the front door like a kid on Christmas morning. Dorothy lets me in through the back entrance, leads me to her desk in the reference section. Stacks of old plat maps and record books tower around her computer. Tom, look at this. She pulls up a scanned document on her screen. Original Surveyor's report from 1953 when your grandfather mapped this area. The road access to the lake was specifically designated as permanent public easement. I lean closer. There's Grandpa's signature, neat and official. Thomas W. Harris, licensed county surveyor. Now look at this. Dorothy clicks to another document. The supposed transfer agreement Karen showed the police. Same year as this surveyor report, but it contradicts everything your grandfather documented. My blood runs cold. They're saying Grandpa got it wrong? Worse than that, Tom, they're saying he lied. That's when I notice Dorothy's hands shaking as she scrolls through the files. Dorothy, what aren't you telling me? She glances toward the library entrance, lowers her voice. My grandson Jake works for the contractor who installed that gate. He called me last night. Said Karen Miller offered him a bonus to keep quiet about the installation. Keep quiet about what? They didn't just install the gate, Tom. They moved the property markers. The room feels like it's spinning. Move them where? 6 feet into your property. Jake has photos on his phone from before and after. He's scared to come forward because he needs this job, but, Tom, they're not just stealing the road. They're stealing part of your land. Before I can respond, the library's front door chimes. Dorothy's face goes white. Through the reference section windows, I see Karen Miller walking toward the information desk. Hide those files, Dorothy whispers. She can't know you were here. I duck behind the periodical stacks just as Karen's voice echoes through the library. Good morning, Dorothy. I'm here to research property records for the Homeowners Association, specifically documentation of survey errors from the 1950s. Survey errors. They're going to discredit Grandpa's work. Dorothy's voice stays steady, professional. What type of records are you looking for, Mrs. Miller? Historical surveyor complaints, corrected boundary disputes, anything that shows the Harris family property was incorrectly mapped. Through the gap between magazines, I watch Karen spread documents across Dorothy's desk. The same briefcase from yesterday, the same confident smile. I have documentation showing systematic errors in surveys conducted by Thomas Harris between 1952 and 1954. The county needs to correct these historical mistakes. Dorothy doesn't look at the documents. Mrs. Miller, Thomas Harris was one of the most respected surveyors in county history. I've never seen a single complaint about his work. Well, you're about to see several. Karen opens a manila folder, pulls out what looks like official complaint forms. Even from my hiding spot, I can see they're crisp and new, like they were printed yesterday. These are serious allegations, Dorothy says carefully. Have these been verified by the county surveyor's office? They will be once I file them this afternoon. That's when Dorothy does something brave and foolish and perfect. She picks up the phone on her desk. County surveyor's office, please. Pause. Yes, I need to speak with someone about historical survey records for the Harris property on Lake Road. Karen's smile disappears. That won't be necessary. Hello, this is Dorothy Stein at the county library. I have someone here claiming Thomas Harris made survey errors in the 1950s. Could you check your complaint records? Another pause. No complaints on file? Ever? Thank you. Dorothy hangs up, looks directly at Karen. Interesting. No complaints about Thomas Harris in 70 years of county records. Those records are incomplete. Mrs. Miller, I've been the county's research librarian for 37 years. Those records are complete, cataloged, and verified. Karen gathers her papers quickly, stuffs them back into the briefcase. I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'll handle this through proper channels. You do that. Karen heads for the door, then stops. Dorothy, you might want to be careful about spreading unverified information. Librarians can lose their positions for providing false research assistance. The threat hangs in the air like smoke from a house fire. After Karen leaves, I come out from behind the magazines. Dorothy's hands aren't shaking anymore. She's angry now. And angry Dorothy Stein is a force of nature. Tom, they're not just coming after your property. They're coming after your grandfather's reputation. And now they're coming after my job. She turns back to her computer, fingers flying across the keyboard. But here's what Karen Miller doesn't know about librarians. We don't just research information, we preserve it. She opens a new window, starts copying files to a flash drive. Every original document, every survey map, every property record going back to 1953, all of it backed up and stored. Dorothy, if this costs you your job... Tom, some fights are worth having. Your grandfather helped map half this county. He was an honest man doing honest work. I won't let them destroy that. My phone buzzes. Another text from another unknown number. Stop digging or everyone pays. I show Dorothy the message. She reads it, then does something I've never seen a librarian do. She smiles like a warrior. Let them try to threaten a librarian, Tom. We've been preserving truth against tyrants for 4,000 years. But as we walk out of the library together, I notice the black SUV parked across the street, tinted windows, engine running. They're watching us now. The black SUV followed me home. Not close enough to be obvious, but close enough to make the point. Turn left on Maple. There it is. 3 cars back, stop at the gas station, it parks across the street. Pull into my driveway, it cruises past, slow enough for me to see the driver's silhouette. I'm standing at my kitchen window, watching that copper surveyor badge catch the afternoon light when my phone rings. Dorothy's grandson Jake, voice tight with panic. Mr. Harris, they fired me. What happened? Karen Miller called my boss, said I was stealing company equipment. They searched my truck, found the photos I took of the property markers. His voice cracks. She knew Mr. Harris. She knew I had evidence. My stomach drops. Jake, are the photos safe? I uploaded them to the cloud before they took my phone, but Mr. Harris, there's something else. Before they fired me, I overheard Karen talking to someone about Phase 2. Phase 2? Utility shutoffs. They're going to cut power and water to anyone who fights the road closure, make it too expensive to live here. The line goes dead. Within an hour, my water pressure drops to a trickle. By evening, it's gone completely. The power stays on, but I get a notice from the electric company about irregularities in service connection, requiring immediate inspection. Bill Henderson calls around 7. His water's off too. So are the Patels, Mrs. Chen's, and everyone else who stood with us at that gate. It's coordinated, Bill says. They're trying to force us out. At 8:30, my doorbell rings. Through the peephole, I see a young woman in a business suit, clipboard in hand, official-looking badge hanging from her neck. Mr. Harris, I'm Jennifer Walsh from County Code Enforcement. We've received complaints about your property. I open the door. She's maybe 30, looks apologetic but determined. What kind of complaints? Unpermitted structures, environmental violations, potential health hazards. She consults her clipboard. I need to conduct a full property inspection. Right now, it's almost dark. Sir, these are serious violations. The county takes environmental hazards very seriously. She walks past me without invitation, starts taking photos with her phone, my coffee cup on the counter, the stack of mail on the kitchen table, the surveyor badge sitting by the window. This metal object, she points at Grandpa's badge, is this properly stored hazardous material? It's a surveyor's badge from the 1970s. Copper can contain lead. Has it been tested for toxicity? I stare at her. You're serious? Mr. Harris, I'm required to document all potential violations. More photos. These windows appear to have non-compliant glass. When were they last inspected? Lady, those windows have been fine for 20 years. Building codes change, sir. What appears safe today might have been inadequate when installed. She spends an hour finding violations in everything from my coffee maker's placement near the sink to the age of paint on my back steps. Every violation comes with a fine. Every fine has a deadline for correction. After she leaves, I add up the citations. $4,200 in mandatory corrections due within 30 days. Combined with Karen's original fines, I'm looking at over $7,000 to keep living in the house I inherited free and clear. That's when Mrs. Chen calls. Tom, you need to come over here right now. Something's happened. I find her standing in her backyard with a flashlight, pointing at her garden. Someone's been digging, not random digging, precise, methodical excavation around her property line. They came during the day while I was at the grocery store, she says. Took soil samples, measured distances, photographed everything. Who? Same code enforcement woman who probably visited you. But Tom, look at this. She leads me to the corner of her yard, shines the flashlight on a small metal stake driven into the ground, brand new, with fresh orange paint. Survey marker, I say. That's not where my property line is. Mrs. Chen's voice is flat with certainty. My husband surveyed this yard himself in 1963. That marker's 3 feet inside my property. We find 2 more markers, both placed to shrink her lot. Someone stealing her land piece by piece. Mrs. Chen, do you still have your husband's survey notes? Everything. Henry kept detailed records. She heads toward her house. Tom, I think we're in more trouble than we realized. Inside, she spreads Henry's original survey maps across her dining room table. Hand-drawn property lines, precise measurements, dated and signed. Compared to the new markers, it's clear what's happening. The Homeowners Association isn't just stealing the road. They're redrawing property lines throughout the neighborhood, claiming land from anyone who opposes them. How is this legal? I ask. Mrs. Chen points to a clause buried in the association's covenant documents. Boundary dispute resolution through certified surveying. If ownership is unclear, the association can conduct new surveys and file corrected plat maps with the county. But ownership isn't unclear. It is if they destroy the original documentation. That hits me like a punch to the chest. The library records Dorothy copied. If those disappear, their new survey becomes the official record. My phone buzzes. Text from Dorothy. Library break-in tonight. Research computers destroyed. Files corrupted. I'm so sorry. Mrs. Chen reads the message over my shoulder. Tom, they're not just stealing our property. They're stealing our proof that it was ever ours. Outside, a car engine starts. Through the window, I see that black SUV pulling away from the curb. They've been watching us plan our defense. And now they know exactly how to destroy it. Have you ever felt that moment when you realize you're not just fighting for your home, but for your right to exist in the place your family built? That's what hit me sitting in Mrs. Chen's dining room, looking at survey maps drawn by dead men who believed measurements mattered more than power. Karen Miller wasn't just stealing a road. She was stealing history. That night, I couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about Grandpa's Surveyor badge sitting on my kitchen table, and how Karen Miller looked at it like it was contaminated metal instead of a lifetime of honest work. At 3 a.m., I got up and really studied that badge for the first time. turned it over in the lamplight, felt the weight of it, the way the copper had worn smooth in spots from Grandpa's thumb. That's when I saw them. Tiny numbers etched into the back, so small I'd never noticed before. Coordinates, latitude and longitude, scratched in Grandpa's careful handwriting. I grabbed my phone, typed the numbers into a mapping app. The pin dropped right on my property, but not at the house. Down by the lake, near the old dock, where Mrs. Chin said her husband had proposed in 1963. I threw on clothes and headed outside with a flashlight. The morning air was cold and still, full of pine scent and lake mist. I followed the coordinates to a spot about 20 feet from the waterline, where an old oak tree cast shadows across the ground. Nothing special looking about it, just dirt and dead leaves. But when I kicked around in the debris, my boot hit something solid. A metal box, buried maybe 6 inches down. Old ammunition case, the kind military surplus stores sell. Inside, wrapped in oiled cloth, were photocopies of every survey map Grandpa ever filed for this area. Complete documentation going back to 1953, including the original county approval for public lake access. At the bottom of the box, a note in Grandpa's handwriting. Tommy, if anyone ever questions the work, the proof is in the details. Property rights don't change because powerful people want them to. Trust the measurements. He knew. Somehow, he knew this day would come. I was photographing the documents with my phone when I heard footsteps behind me. Find what you were looking for? Jake Stein stepped out from behind the oak tree, holding a small device that looked like a radio. Jake, what are you doing here? Same thing as you, looking for answers. He held up the device. GPS unit. I've been taking precise measurements of those property markers they moved. Want to know something interesting? My flashlight beam caught his face. Kid looked like he hadn't slept in days. They're not random, Mr. Harris. The new boundaries create a perfect corridor from the main road to a parcel of land behind the lake. Land that's not part of any homeowner's property. What's back there? According to county records, nothing. Just undeveloped acreage owned by something called Lakeview Development Corporation. The pieces started clicking together, like bullets loading into a chamber. Karen Miller doesn't want to close the road, I said. She wants to control it. Jake nodded. Charge access fees to a private lake resort. Turn public land into premium real estate. You have proof of this? Better than proof. Jake pulled out his phone, showed me a photo. I followed Karen yesterday after she left the library. She met with a construction crew at that empty land behind the lake. They're planning to break ground next month. The photo showed Karen standing next to surveying equipment, pointing toward the lake. In the background, signs for Lakeview Development Corporation. Jake, this is huge. We need to take this to the police. Already tried. Called Sergeant Williams yesterday. Told him what I found. He said he'd look into it. Jake's voice went flat. This morning, I got a call saying the investigation was closed due to insufficient evidence. What? Someone got to him, Mr. Harris. Someone with more pull than we have. That's when I heard the car engines. Multiple vehicles, moving slow and quiet through the neighborhood. Jake switched off his GPS unit, motioned for me to kill the flashlight. We crouched behind the oak tree as 3 cars cruised past on the road. Black sedans with tinted windows, moving like a patrol. They're checking houses, Jake whispered, making sure nobody's awake to see what happens next. What happens next? Before Jake could answer, we heard the sound of heavy machinery starting up. Diesel engines, hydraulic winds, the backup beepers of construction equipment. Down the road, bright work lights flickered on. They were installing something big. Jake and I crept through the trees, staying in shadows, until we had a clear view of the road. A crew of 6 workers was setting up a concrete barrier across the public access, twice as high as the gate they'd installed before. Permanent, impassable. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the sign they bolted to the barrier. Lakeview Resort, private property, members only. Karen Miller stood beside a white pickup truck, directing the work like a general positioning artillery. She was wearing jeans and work boots now, hair pulled back, all business. Phase 3, Jake breathed. They're not just stealing the road. They're turning it into a toll booth. I pulled out my phone to record video, but Karen's head snapped toward our hiding spot like she'd heard the camera click. Floodlights, she called to the work crew. Light up that tree line. Suddenly, we were caught in blazing white light, exposed as targets in a shooting gallery. Gentlemen, Karen's voice carried clearly across the distance. You're trespassing on resort property. I suggest you leave before we call security. Security, not police. Security. That's when I understood we weren't just fighting the homeowners association anymore. We were fighting a corporation with unlimited money, no conscience, and enough political connections to shut down police investigations. Jake grabbed my arm. We need to go, now. But as we backed toward the tree line, I saw something that made me stop cold. One of the workers installing the barrier was wearing a county uniform, official county employee, working under floodlights at 4 a.m. to seal off public property for a private resort. They didn't just own the homeowners association. They owned the county too. Jake and I made it back to my house just as the sun started creeping over the horizon. We sat at my kitchen table, staring at Grandpa's copper Surveyor badge and the documents from his hidden cache, trying to figure out how two ordinary guys could fight a machine that owned everything from the county clerk to the police department. We're outgunned, Jake said. They have money, connections, legal cover. What do we have? I picked up that copper badge, felt its familiar weight. We have the truth. Truth doesn't beat bulldozers, Mr. Harris. Doesn't it? That's when I remembered something Grandpa used to say when I was a kid helping him survey properties. Son, the most important tool a surveyor carries isn't his transit or his measuring chain. It's his reputation. Lose that, and all the fancy equipment in the world won't help you. Karen Miller had built her whole operation on one assumption. Nobody would challenge the official story. But what if the official story fell apart in public, in front of everyone she needed to impress? I opened my laptop, started typing. Jake, how many people in this neighborhood do you think got water shutoffs yesterday? Maybe 20 families. And how many got visits from code enforcement? Probably the same 20. All on the same day, all with the same violations, all with the same fines. I kept typing. What are the odds of that being coincidence? Jake's eyes lit up. Your thinking pattern of harassment. I'm thinking we go public, not with accusations or theories, with math. For the next 3 hours, we built a presentation. Every violation notice, every water shutoff, every code enforcement visit, organized by date and time. The pattern was undeniable, systematic harassment of anyone who opposed the road closure. But we needed an audience. The town council meeting, Jake said. Tonight at 7, public comment period. Will they let us present? Public comment is guaranteed by state law. They can't refuse to hear us. At 6:30, we loaded my truck with poster boards and documents. As we pulled out of the driveway, I saw the black SUV again, following at a careful distance. Let them follow. Where we were going, witnesses were exactly what we needed. The town council chambers were packed. Karen Miller sat in the front row with her supporters, all dressed in business attire, looking official and respectable. Behind them, the rest of the neighborhood, families who'd lost water service, elderly residents facing impossible fines, small business owners whose livelihoods depended on lake access. When the public comment period opened, Karen stood first. Council members, I'm here tonight to address false accusations being spread about the Homeowners Association's legal acquisition of road access. These accusations threaten property values and community stability. She spoke for exactly 3 minutes about legal procedures and proper documentation, her voice calm and authoritative. The council members nodded along like students taking notes. Then it was my turn. I walked to the podium carrying Grandpa's copper badge in my pocket and Jake's poster boards under my arm. Council members, my name is Tom Harris. My grandfather surveyed half this county, including the public access road to Mirror Lake. Tonight, I want to show you something interesting about coincidences. I set up the first poster board, timeline of events, starting with the gate installation. Monday morning, road closure. Monday afternoon, water shutoffs to 23 families. Tuesday morning, code enforcement visits to the same 23 families. Tuesday afternoon, utility connection problems for the same 23 families. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Now, what are the statistical odds of 23 unrelated problems happening to the exact same families in the exact same order over 36 hours? I flipped to the second poster board, Mathematical probability calculations. According to basic statistics, the odds are roughly 14 million to 1. Karen Miller's face went pale. But here's where it gets really interesting. Third poster board, property ownership maps. Every single family targeted for harassment owns land adjacent to the proposed Lakeview Resort development. Gasps from the audience. Karen Miller stood up, started toward the door. "Mrs. Miller," I called out, "since you're here, maybe you can explain how you signed property transfer documents in 2019, 2 years before you were elected association president?" She froze at the chamber door. "And while you're at it, maybe explain why county employees were working at 4 this morning to install resort barriers on public property?" The room erupted, council members demanding answers, residents shouting questions. Karen Miller trapped at the door by reporters who'd somehow appeared with cameras. But I wasn't done. I pulled Grandpa's copper badge from my pocket, held it up for everyone to see. This badge belonged to Thomas Harris, county surveyor from 1952 to 1984. He mapped every inch of this area, including the permanent public easement that gives every citizen access to Mirror Lake. I set the badge on the podium, pulled out the photocopied documents from his hidden cache. 3 days ago, someone tried to destroy the county records that prove this easement exists. But my grandfather was a careful man. He kept copies. I read from his original survey notes, his precise measurements, his certification that the lake access was public land in perpetuity. "The question isn't whether this land belongs to the people," I said. "The question is what we do about officials who tried to steal it." Council Chairman Peterson, red-faced and sweating, called for an emergency executive session. The meeting dissolved into chaos as residents demanded immediate action. But the real victory came 3 hours later. Sheriff's deputies arrested Karen Miller at her home on charges of document fraud and conspiracy to commit theft. The county attorney announced a full investigation into the Lakeview Development Corporation. The concrete barrier came down before morning. 2 weeks later, I got my water back. Jake got his job back. Mrs. Chen's property markers were restored to their original positions. The lake access road reopened with a new sign. Mirror Lake Public Access, dedicated 1953, protected in perpetuity by the Thomas Harris Survey. I keep Grandpa's copper badge on my kitchen windowsill now, where the morning light catches it just right. Sometimes I think about what he said about reputation being a surveyor's most important tool. Turns out it works for regular people too. Karen Miller pled guilty to fraud charges and moved away. The Homeowners Association dissolved. The Lakeview Development Corporation abandoned their resort plans. But here's what I learned from all this. When powerful people try to steal what belongs to everyone, they're counting on you to feel too small to fight back. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is prove them wrong. The lake's still there, the road's still public, and my grandfather's measurements still matter. Some things don't change just because someone with money wants them to.